Hello, everybody. This is Glenn back with the last part of this Bears offseason preview video series. This will be part 4. In part 3, we did a mock draft based on the team situation after free agency in this made up scenario that we are living in through these videos. But I found it a fun video to make, fun process to go through. So, based on the draft, we're going to go through a look at how the 90-man roster starts to shake up, and then take a way too early look at what I think a 53-man roster might look like. That being said, I'm going to turn off the camera. We'll get into the video. Thank you. All right, so taking a look back at the draft, able to get what I think could be a potential building block and game changer on the edge, Miles Murphy, addressing some other key defensive needs with Emmanuel Forbes and Gervon Dexter early in the draft, adding some nice depth through Cooper Beebe, Jalen Hyatt, Hendon Hooker. Darnell Wright, I think, is a guy that could step in and compete for a starting right tackle position against Larry Borom from day one. And then we just get some nice depth later in the draft as well. Another nice part about our trade back scenario, not just getting some second round draft capital, but also we are able to pick up the first and third from Carolina next year in the 2024 draft, which will obviously allow us to attack some more key areas of need that I'm sure will still exist on this roster. Rome wasn't built in a day. We're not going to take one of the worst rosters in the league to the best roster in the league in one offseason. This will be a continuous process. But I like the fact that we'll have 2 first-rounders next year, 2 third-rounders next year, along with our normal 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 6th-round picks. We don't have that 7th-round pick because that's what we used to trade for N'Keal Harry. But I like the way the next year's draft capital is already shaping up, especially after addressing some key areas of need in this year's draft and free agency. Way too early look at a 90-man roster. I think it shapes up similar to this. The players in green are players that were drafted. Yellow are positions where I think an undrafted free agent or just a general free agent in general would be a valuable position filled to bring in for some competition. You'll notice that pre-draft we had Khalil Herbert as a running back too. I think with the way the draft and free agency shaped up, I think he would be running back number 1 on this team. But I expect Kenny McIntosh to make some kind of impact as well. Not sure Hendon Hooker would be quarterback number 2 right off the bat. He might start off a little lower in the depth chart, but I would expect, by mid-season him to be pushing for that quarterback 2 spot. Tight end's still a little weak. Say wide receiver is starting to get some pretty strong depth. I think you got 6 guys that could be wide receiver 2, 3, 4 on a team. Not sure you have a true number 1. I like the way our offensive line is shaped up. I think Darnell Wright, as I said earlier, can step in and compete with Larry Borom, Alex Leatherwood for the right tackle spot. I think Cooper Beebe and Sam Mustipher provide some much needed interior offensive line depth. Some really strong interior offensive line depth as well. Defense, the starting 11 is really shaping up nicely in my opinion. The linebacking core lacks a real true difference maker. And, it is going to be a young team in general. But I think you got a nice, decent defense here that hopefully Matt Eberflus can start creating some identities there in defense for us and not have our identity being just a laughing stock of the league. We look at our 53-man roster. Way too early look. I think this is how it's going to shape up towards the end of training camp. You come down here, there's not really any surprise cuts across the board. Probably the biggest surprise is I think Santos has probably got to go. He's done his job the last however many years as a Bear, but he just has kind of a weak leg, and if he gets a little shaky with the kicks, which he hasn't been quite himself this year, I like the idea of bringing in somebody with a little bit bigger leg. It's not great when, you're considering like 52 yards to be like his max. Across the board, not really a ton of surprises. You look at these cuts and you realize all these guys are pretty expendable. Looking up at this roster, our offense is coming together relatively nicely. Some real nice depth on the offensive line. Feel better about our quarterback position. There's still some areas of need though over the future as we continue to improve this roster. Defense, similar vein, but you got to say it's improved from 2022. Once again, these are the draft picks we'd have in 2024. That, along with free agency, I think on a going forward basis, these are some areas you would have to consider addressing. Cole Kmet is in a contract year in 2023. If we bring him back, I still think we need to add a true borderline starting caliber tight end next to him. Maybe even somebody better and have him be tight end too. So I think that's a position that needs to be addressed. I think we need to continue to add some depth at the interior defensive line position. I'm intrigued by Jonah Tavai, but he is a late round draft pick in this scenario. There's a chance he doesn't pan out. I might say just defensive line depth in general. I think that needs to be improved. We definitely need a true running back number one difference maker. Quarterbacks, a lot of times, one of their biggest safety valves is their checkdowns with the running backs. Not sure there's a guy on this roster that really is a surefire safety valve check down type running back. I like Khalil Herbert when he runs the rock, but I'm not sure he's quite making a difference in the passing game. I think Braxton Jones is a long-term tackle on this team. I know he's played at left tackle and done a pretty decent job. But maybe in the future he's a right tackle and we draft a true stud or trade for or sign a true stud left tackle. Something to think about. Linebacking core needs improvement without a doubt. I like Jack Sanborn. I would love him if he was like our third best linebacker. These other two positions, I think these guys will do the job for the time being. But I think if we're realistically speaking about it, if we want to get to the point where we're contending for a championship, linebacking core needs some improving. Needs some difference makers. I like the future of Myles Murphy, but Arden Key on a one-year contract. Travis Kimpson coming off a down year. Dominique Robinson, a fifth-round draft pick, I believe, sixth-round draft pick. We need somebody opposite Myles Murphy. Maybe even you'd say two guys. Need some more defensive end, pass rushing difference makers. We did not get a true number one receiver or a true cornerback number one in my opinion. I think Emmanuel Forbes and Jalen Johnson, they're playing their best football. I think they're both cornerback number twos. Kyler Gordon, I'm not even sure he could be a cornerback number two. So if we even bring back Jalen Johnson, or if we don't, we got to get a cornerback number one. Wide receiver, similar vein, whether it's trade, free agency, next year's draft. Maybe Carolina sucks when we get a high draft pick. I think we need a true difference maker at wide receiver number one. So if you look at this 53-man roster overall, I think you're going to agree that it's a much improved roster from the 2022 Chicago Bears. I would expect this team to challenge for a playoff spot. Maybe sneak in, maybe not. But I think it would be a much more competitive team. I like the overall improvement in depth. I think the offensive line and secondary has a chance to really be some strong position groups on this team. Hope to see Justin Fields take the next step. But this team still needs some true difference makers. That's my only question mark with trading back to 8. I still think Myles Murphy could be a true difference maker, and I don't think he's much different than Will Anderson. I'd argue he maybe even has a little bit higher ceiling, um, lower floor for sure. But um, his team needs some difference makers at skill position, running back, wide receiver, maybe tight end, another defensive end, some linebackers, cornerback. Need some true swagger type guys to really try to make a championship push in the coming years. Say we got one of those guys, but we need some more. No doubt about it. All right, guys. That is my Bears 2023 offseason preview. That's how I would handle it if I were GM. I'm not GM. I don't get paid for any of this. Just like to have some fun and talk Chicago Bears football. Ryan Poles, I got some faith in you. I think you missed on the Chase Claypool trade. I think you'd made some smart decisions elsewhere. I was tough on the Velus Jones pick after the midway point in the season. He dropped some key punt returns that cost us games. However, in the recent weeks, he's looked okay, despite being a 30-year-old rookie. I'm interested to see what you do this offseason, Ryan Poles. Ball's in your court. You going to stay at number 2, stay at number 1, draft who you think is the best player in the draft? Are you going to move from Justin Fields? Are you going to decide, hey, I didn't draft this guy. This is, he's a nice player, but he's not what I'm looking for in a quarterback. Do you value Quentin Johnson? And do you really try to attack that wide receiver position need? Are you okay with certain areas that I'm concerned with that maybe you're not quite as concerned? It'll be interesting to see. Rooting for you. I'm rooting for you, Ryan Poles. My sanity relies on your success. Best of luck, my man. Best of luck. All right. To all you guys who tuned into this 4-part series, I hope you enjoyed. I don't see myself bringing too many more of these videos to the forefront. Maybe I'll do a couple mock drafts. Maybe like one where I go all out on offense, one where I go all out on defense, one where I do as many trades as possible, one where I do no trades. Maybe some scenarios like that. That could be fun. But I don't see myself putting out any 4-part mini documentary series like I did this time. If you enjoyed, drop me some likes, drop me some subscriptions, drop me some follows. And until next time, which will probably be some best bets of the NFL playoffs with me and Big Jack, I bid you adieu. I love you. Peace.